Boss Bullies cancer patient. You wouldn't believe what happened to me. It was so wild and crazy that I still can't quite believe it. Let me rewind the clock for you. The year started out pretty normal, but things took a dramatic turn when I got diagnosed with something called ovarian cancer. It was a shock. I mean, who expects something like that to happen to them? My world was flipped upside down, and my mind was racing. It was the scariest thing I'd ever been through. All I could think about was how sick I was and what would happen if the treatment didn't work. The doctors did a whole lot of tests and tried to figure out what to do. I had to stay in the hospital for a while, and they gave me lots of medication to help. I remember how scary the needles felt, and the treatments were really uncomfortable. I thought about my life and all the things I would miss out on. I wondered if I'd be able to go back to school and if I'd get to experience all the things people usually get to do when they're young. It felt like I had a heavy weight on my chest, but my family kept telling me that everything was going to be okay. And my doctors were super nice, which really helped. I kept telling myself that things could get better, that I had to stay positive. After lots of chemo and surgery, the cancer finally started going away, and I started feeling better. I didn't want this horrible disease to win. It wasn't going to define me. I wanted to get back to my life, and get back to being the person I was before. But I still had to go to the hospital for checkups, and the doctors would always give me medication. It was never a guarantee, so I still had to be careful and listen to the doctors. But most of the time, I felt like myself again, and I felt a lot more optimistic about the future. I had survived the worst part, but I knew I had to take things slow and not overwork myself. At that time, I was working on a program called Ambassadors at my university. It was a cool program where you get free tuition if you have good grades. All you have to do is volunteer some of your time and help with events on campus. I had to wear these cool uniforms, and I had to go to a lot of meetings and events with the other ambassadors. The university really loved it when we all showed up for the big events. They said they felt like a team, and that was important. It seemed pretty exciting to me at first. I knew I had to be careful about how much I worked because I was still recovering, but I was really happy to be part of it. They told me it was a big commitment, but it seemed pretty low-key, like a fun side job. And they paid for school, which was great. So I signed up. I was excited. It seemed like a fun opportunity and a great way to meet other students who loved the school as much as I did. It seemed like the perfect way to help other students. I wanted to give back. I met all the other ambassadors and we all clicked really well. They all seemed super friendly. The program seemed great. We went to meetings, got free pizza, and had a lot of fun at events. But then I met this one supervisor who totally ruined things. I think she had her name on my application papers or something, but I can't really remember what role she had. We can call her Ms. M. It really makes me shudder when I think about it. Ms. M is one of those people who likes to follow the rules no matter what, even if they make no sense. If you ever met someone who loves to follow rules, then you know how frustrating that can be. It can be so hard to try and reason with people like that. The program didn't have a lot of rules, though, and everything seemed really relaxed at first. At least that's what it seemed like, but I didn't realize that things were going to get a lot more difficult when I met Ms. M. Ms. M didn't like things that weren't done according to plan, and she was super controlling. She kind of had a crazy obsession with every tiny detail. One of the things she was obsessed with was clocking in and clocking out. We were all supposed to chat online through a program called Microsoft Teams, and we had to type messages like, "I'm here," to let her know we were online, and "I'm leaving," to let her know we were gone. It didn't even seem to make a difference, because the program has its own time clock feature, which is really easy to use. I even offered to help set up the time clock, so it was more convenient for her, but she said no. She even got upset at me and told me I was being insubordinate. Can you imagine? I was just trying to be helpful. She always had this big attitude. She acted as if she were better than me. I always thought about things like, why is she being so mean? And, why is she acting like a grown-up when we're both just students? She was in charge of us, and she just kept throwing her weight around. Ms. M also insisted on everyone using their social media to post stuff about the university. We all used our accounts to spread the word about all the cool things our school was doing. We were supposed to post about the university events, tell people about all the great classes, and show everyone how cool our professors were. She would constantly check on all the ambassadors, making sure everyone was posting, and she had this huge list of things that she expected us to post about. It was kind of annoying, because a lot of the ambassadors, including me, felt uncomfortable about it. But she was insistent that we used social media, and it was a really big part of our responsibilities. I felt like she was a spy, and she was always watching everyone. It was creepy, but I knew I couldn't say anything to her, because she wouldn't listen. So, I didn't really post anything on social media about the program. She was totally obsessed, and it didn't make any sense. M was super picky, and I wasn't her favorite student. I didn't think we were too different, but we'd always got in each other's way. It was like she wanted to be the star of the show, and she didn't like that I would often stand up to her. It's really annoying when you meet someone who acts like they know everything, and then you're always tiptoeing around their moods. You know how sometimes you meet someone and you just feel like there's something off about them. Like a nagging feeling, it's like you just know they're trouble. It's hard to describe, but there's just a vibe you pick up. But I just tried to be nice to her, and I was always ready to listen. But M wasn't someone you could talk to. It felt like a one-way conversation, and everything I said was like it went in one ear and out the other. I was just trying to get through the year, but she was always trying to get the best of me. The only saving grace was that the other ambassadors were super nice. We all worked together, got along really well, and were happy to help each other out. I knew they were just like me, trying to make their way through the program. I was really happy to get their support, especially when I had to deal with M's awful behavior. They always made me feel better. They were the only reason I kept going back. But M kept turning up the heat. One day, she announced a big meeting with the college dean. The dean was coming to our program to give a big speech about all the amazing things the school was doing. The whole meeting was going to be live streamed on the internet so everyone could watch it. All the ambassadors had to go, because it was super important to be part of the meeting. But that's where M took things to a whole new level. She told everyone that they had to be on camera during the meeting, no exceptions. She said it was super important, because everyone needed to be professional. She sent us a message saying, students must have their cameras on and phones off. Repeat, phones off, cameras on. It was just really rude and mean. It didn't even seem like it was about making sure everyone looked nice. It felt like she was just trying to have control over everything, because she loves rules. But of course, I was still trying to get through treatment, and things were kind of rough, because I'd been feeling under the weather. And the doctor had just given me a new prescription that I needed to take at a certain time. It felt so obvious to me, so I wrote an email to M saying that I would have to be at a doctor's appointment, and I couldn't turn my camera on during the meeting. But M didn't respond. I tried sending a second email, but she didn't even bother to acknowledge it. I couldn't believe it. M just ignored me. She made it clear she didn't care about my situation. I knew I was right, and that I wasn't doing anything wrong. The day of the meeting finally arrived, and I tried to stay positive, knowing that my doctor's appointment would come before the meeting. But I was nervous because I didn't know how M was going to react, and I knew she could cause a big scene. A few minutes before the meeting started, I sent a quick message on Teams to M, and I told her again that I was going to be at the doctor's, but she totally ignored me. The dean was talking, and all the ambassadors were watching. The meeting seemed like it was going pretty well. But M had a completely different plan. She stopped the dean in the middle of his talk, and said, "Excuse me," she said, "could we please have all of the students turn their cameras on?" I was totally disgusted. My blood was boiling. M was such a total tyrant. And she wasn't even subtle about it. It was like she was trying to make things difficult just to make things difficult. I felt so defeated, and to add insult to injury, I had just come back from a checkup, so I still had to go back to the doctor's office. I knew I couldn't let M get away with her terrible behavior, so I quickly typed a message in the team's chat to the whole group. M, I have a private situation that keeps me from turning on my camera. I've contacted you already. M seemed a little surprised that I was actually speaking up. A few seconds later, she decided to call me out by name. She said, the expectations were clear, and you were told multiple times about this. Every other student here managed to do it, and I expect the same from you. It was all I could do not to yell at her right then and there. But then, I realized this was my chance to finally stick up for myself. It was time to show M that I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. I wanted her to see that I was more than just an ambassador in this silly program. I wasn't just going to let her dictate how I should live my life, and she was going to pay for this. And at that very moment, I had an idea. I'm usually pretty private and keep to myself, but I decided to go for it. I could hear that voice in my head that told me it was time to fight back. It was time to get creative. It was time to be brave. It was a couple of days before that I had told one of the nurses at the hospital, Amy, about how M was being such a bully, and she was so upset that she told me to play up my illness if M said anything about my camera. I know it sounds a bit crazy, but at that time, I really felt like she had my back. She was right, I wasn't being unreasonable. So I took my nurse's advice. I had this huge crazy feeling about what I was going to do, but it felt right. The meeting was just for us. The ambassadors. It wasn't like it was going to be broadcast to a large audience. No one I knew outside the university would watch it. So I figured, what's the worst that could happen? So I did a little something that totally surprised everyone. I moved my laptop back so you could see more of my clothes, so they knew I wasn't just hanging out at home. Then I flipped my camera on, and when everyone in the meeting saw me, they gasped. I was a little nervous, because it felt really embarrassing at first, but then I realized what I was doing. It was kind of a performance. I knew that a lot of the other ambassadors thought Ms. M was terrible too, and they didn't like her either, but they were too scared to say anything. I wanted to help them. I wanted to give them a voice. So, I went for it. I could see Ms. M through the camera lens, and she looked like she had seen a ghost. Her mouth was hanging open and her eyes were so big, like they were about to pop out of her head. She didn't even say anything. She just stared at me. And then I decided to talk. I tried to make my voice sound really soft, but it was still hard to sound relaxed because I was still so surprised. It was really difficult not to start laughing, because everyone was staring at me, and I knew I had done the right thing. I knew it would feel so great to have a laugh, but it was really scary at the same time. I asked Ms. M through email and Teams if I could opt out of having my camera on, I said, but she insisted. I gave Ms. M a little stare, and then continued. It was important to get her to admit what she had done. I paused for a second. It felt like an eternity. I was so nervous that Ms. M was going to shout at me, or tell the dean that I was being disrespectful, or tell the other ambassadors to kick me out of the meeting. I thought about what I could do if she yelled. Should I pretend that my phone battery was dead and just exit the meeting? But thankfully, no one said anything. The room was so quiet, but my whole body was buzzing with energy. I could feel my heart beating 1,000,000 miles a minute. Virtual engagement is so important for this new era of learning, I said in a really shaky voice, pretending to cry. I can see why having the camera on is important, though I was hoping I might be granted an exception. I felt like I was in a movie. Ms. M looked completely terrified. She probably couldn't believe what was happening. The dean also seemed a little shocked and flustered. He took a breath, and said, Ms. R, he said, you are more than welcome to turn your camera off. I am so sorry for the misunderstanding. And then, without a word, Ms. M abruptly left the meeting. She seemed like she was really rattled and scared. I knew I had really hit a nerve. At that moment, I could see the entire meeting from Ms. M's point of view. I could just imagine her saying, what is going on? And how disappointed she was in me. I was shocked. It was the perfect ending. It was almost like Ms. M was really upset because she was afraid of the dean. It was a little odd, but maybe it was because of her work situation. I didn't understand, but I wasn't about to question anything. And guess what? Ms. M's boss, Anthony, was in the meeting the whole time. He hadn't said anything before this, but Ms. M had apparently invited him to observe the meeting, and he must have thought it was all perfectly fine, because he didn't interrupt Ms. M. I felt bad for Anthony because he had no idea what was going on. But it was a big moment for Anthony. Anthony probably had no idea what was happening. He saw Ms. M act terrible, and he didn't seem to like it. When Ms. M left, he took a quick glance around the meeting, looked at the other ambassadors, and then without a word, Anthony also left the meeting. It was like an episode of a spy show. It felt really exciting, and everything had worked out perfectly. And it all seemed so easy. I was actually a little sad about how it ended so quickly. I know it's hard to believe this all happened, and maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, but I really wanted Ms. M to get what she deserved. She wasn't nice, and I'd had enough. And now, she wasn't going to have anything to do with me. I was going to be okay, even if I was going to have to finish out the program without the help of any supervisors. You can't be afraid to stand up for yourself, even if the other people are older than you, and you might get into trouble. But, it wasn't easy. The school told me they were going to let Ms. M go and do some serious investigating, and they told me they were going to get rid of all of the bad rules she made. And of course, Anthony apologized 1,000,000 times and offered me a big apology. They said they would try and fix everything, but they were worried about bad publicity. They also asked if I wanted to speak with a lawyer, but I just wanted to get things done. So, I said no. It seemed like a bigger deal than it really was. And guess what? It worked. Ms. M left the program, and all the awful rules disappeared. It was so easy, but it was worth it. The school also decided to remove the live-streamed video from YouTube and the school website. I think the school was really worried that they might be in trouble, but I was just happy it was gone. It had felt like everyone was watching me, even after the meeting ended. After it was all over, I was totally shocked. And I couldn't stop thinking about how great it felt to stick up for myself. And I had the support of my nurse, Amy, who had helped me see it was okay to get upset about these things. I realized that even if it's a little scary, it's really important to speak up and make sure you're treated right. It made me really happy, but it also made me realize that I needed to slow down. I didn't need any drama, or more fights. And Ms. M was never going to be part of my life again. It felt good.